Chapter 15. Did you see him beat Roddy Swain? Geez, just played with him, he did. And like this, opened him up, feinted, and hit him with that left. And over he went, and I swear to God it didn't travel more than 6 inches. Swain didn't move, the ref didn't even have to count. It's in the 4th, and Johnny's been chasing this Brendan all over the ring. The 6-day bike race had nothing on it. And then he nails him on the ropes. Left, right, too fast to see. And Johnny steps back and measures his man and lets that left go. And it lifted Brendan's feet off the canvas. He's no good, no hoppers, that's all he's knocking over. Stacked fights, the game's wicked. And Gus Daly didn't have a look in. You know the rep Gus had, hit him once and hang your gloves up till next time. Well, he hit Costello, one of the prettiest rights you ever seen, a perfect cross smack on the chin, and you could see poor old Gus get ready almost to walk to a neutral. But he didn't even jar Costello, and whatever he thought, he didn't have much time to do it in, for Costello smashed that left into Daly's ribs and he grunted with pain. And Costello hit him with the right on the point, and it was God save the king. Listen, Mug, you mean to tell me that... Listen, he's too good, this Costello. Sets up, that's all they are. They are grooming him for big money. I seen McGordy hit Les Darcy with that famous McGordy left hook, and I seen the old Les grin, and when I seen Costello tonight, it took me back, I can tell you. Costello beats Mitchell on a KO. Brain knocked out in 8th. Points win to Costello. Costello KOs Maxwell in 2nd. This boy's the goods. You got a world beater if you watch him. Sam, if you take him along. Sam, if you don't hurry him, Sam. Costello challenges Wally McNabb for welter title. Hey Johnny, Costello cried excitedly. You see what the papers are saying about your chances. Had a glance at him, Johnny said, with a grin at the pleasure on his father's face. They tip you to beat this McNabb, some of 'em. And listen to this one. Wally McNabb should give Costello his hardest fight to date. McNabb is a cunning boxer with a wallop in both hands and has had a good deal more experience. But he will be up against an opponent who boxes brilliantly, who can take a punch to give a better one. A fast, heavy-hitting fighter who, if he beats McNabb, will prove himself one of the finest ringmen this country has had. How's that, beamed Costello? How's that? Don't believe everything you read in the papers, Dad, Johnny told him, smiling. His mother came in and set the meal down before him. I do wish you'd give it up, Johnny, she said. Fancy him giving it up now, snorted Costello, when he's lifting his foot to the top rung. He would be the fool, wouldn't he? I don't like it, Miss Costello said, and went back to get her tea, and her husband's. And she came in and sat down, and they ate, and Costello said, Liz, you know what Sam Piercy told me about Johnny. He says Johnny's got the fastest defense he ever seen. And you know what that means, don't you? I haven't the faintest idea, she said. Costello cried impatiently. Well, it means he can keep the punches off. He don't get hit like others do. But he might sometime, he might, and they're terrible blows. They don't hurt as much as you think, Mum, Johnny said kindly. Your mind's all keyed up, and you're thinking, and absorbed, and you don't feel them. Oh, Johnny, I do look as silly as all that. What do you think about McNabb, Johnny? Said Costello, pausing with a piece of meat on his fork halfway to his mouth. Think you'll do him? I think I will, Johnny said quietly. Feel you're ready to, do you? I hate to think of it, said Miss Costello. Well, you just do what you always do, Costello told her, holding his chop and chewing the meat off it. You just go to bed and sleep. Go to bed and sleep, she snapped at him. Where'd you get that idea? It's knee drill for me from the time the thing starts till it's finished. I'm a nervous wreck at the end of it. I wish you wouldn't be that way, Mum. It worries me. I wish you'd come and see me fight now and then, and just see for yourself what happens. Me at a fight, glory be to God, I'd die." She went out to get the teapot, and Johnny looked at his father. "No," he said, "I think I'm ready for him, and anyway, Sam docks, and Sam's all right. Sam wouldn't rush me into a fight I wasn't ready for. He's too square for that. I think so too, but there's plenty would ruin you for life just to get a few lousy quick quid. You've come on like a hurricane since you took up with Sam." "Yeah, I should have gone there long before I did," Johnny said thoughtfully, and he thought, "I'm lucky to have Sam Piercy, shrewd, fatherly, big-hearted Sam. He coasted me along, he guided me, and didn't give me any baloney. Shrew, you could have been around with Shrew still. Belted, shocked, thick ears, squashed nose, deaf as a post. Punchy, dull-witted, like Limpy Burke. Brawny Hanson, Willie Match, ta-ta-ta talking, like Billy Crimp, and if not with Joe Shrew, then Tom Shrew, Harry Shrew, Dick Shrew, any one of the Shrews all over town, vultures gluttonizing on good boys, taking in good boys and sending them out wrecks and criminals. You had luck, Johnny boy, to get hold of a clean and decent trainer manager like Sam Piercy. How you feeling, son? Nervous?" "Ah, cut it out, Sam," Johnny laughed, and he looked at Sam, and Sam was the one that looked nervous. His slab of red face showed it, and it showed in his speckled eyes, and his quick movements in his voice, but he had himself under control. He picked up Johnny's hands and looked at the tapes and started to talk. High and low, fast, quiet, his eyes shrinking and expanding with the tempo and substance of his talk. There was a knock on the dressing-room door, and Johnny's father came in, and he looked nervous too. He just stood there and grinned in a keyed-up way, and breathed hard, and slapped Johnny lightly on the back, and said they'd all be in there battling for him. And remember, you've got the saints of the Costellos on your side, and the medals your mother sewed into your pants. And remember, Mum's at home praying, and remember, the quicker you get it over and done with and be home, the better she'll be. And remember, Johnny, win this and you're champ of Australia. You've got the shamrock juice in your blood. You're Irish to the hairs on your grand head. And win this, Johnny, son, and you'll give 'em something to talk about back in that country." Johnny felt embarrassed and laughed, and there was another knock at the door. "But no women in here, Miss Whitty McIntosh said." And Whitty nodded to Johnny, and Johnny went over and put his head out the door, and a kiss landed on his cheek with the speed of a striking hawk. And Francie's beautiful eyes sparkled, and she said, "Good luck, darling. I wish I could hop in and help you with an umbrella or something." And he laughed and gave her a quick kiss and came back to the dressing room, with her spirit singing in his. His father went out, and Sam Piercy after him, and in a little while Sam came back, and he nodded to Johnny, and Johnny sprang alertly off the table and pulled his green dressing gown tighter around him and walked out and up the aisle. And he heard the ocean of sound, the whistles and the cheers, and there was a slight fluttering twinge low in his belly, but he took no notice of it. Up the aisle you're walking to the throne. Johnny, you've got this coming to you. You dreamed about this and made it come true. You've lived clean. You've always done the right thing, tried to do it anyway. They came up to you, the grafters and the chiselers, and they made a mouthful about what they could do for you. They offered you bribes to take a fall, to fight a put-up go, and they wanted to run you around and place you as a ring-in for a good cut, but a better one for themselves, and you told them where to go and what to do. You didn't make any of the stinking smells in this game. You didn't put any of the festery sores on the healthy flesh of this game. You sidestepped the corruption and kept your eyes on the clean light burning ahead. You kept away from the touts, the toadies, the urgers, the parasites, all the vermin that creep in and crawl in where the money smells. The bookies with their sweet rotted pockets. You didn't let any of them chalk you up as another sacrifice for their own greedy gains, and let them spill you like salt into water into nothing, while they clotted around the next victim. You kept away from the good times and the bad women, and you tried not to let any of your success go to your head. And now you're here at last, up the aisle, Johnny, and into the ring, and the throne's on the other side of this fight. McNabb came, and the crowd roared again. McNabb wore a red satin dressing gown. His hair was parted in the middle, crinkly like charred wood dark. His face was white and set, his eyes grim and deep in his head. He looked as tough as he sat in his corner. The announcer was speaking, and while he spoke, Johnny looked around the packed bowl of the stadium. Faces tiered row above row back into the darkness, and he looked down at the ringside, and his father nodded his head in that sideways fashion at him, and Frankie shook her hands above her head for him, Francie. The referee climbed through the ropes in his spotless whites, called the boxers to mid-ring, and gave them their instructions. They went back to their corners, slipped the gowns off their shoulders. McNabb limbered with a knee bend. Johnny resigned his boots. The bell clanged. They turned and came out, and the excitement seethed through the mob like wind in a forest. Every eye was alert and magnetized by that white square blaze under the arc lights, and the play of light on the fighters, muscles bulging and shading into muscle. The shoulder development of Johnny Costello in the green trunks, the powerful legs of Wally McNabb, the jerk of the thigh muscles, and the quiver and the whiteness of his body against the puce trunks. "Box him the first round," Sam Piercy said. "Don't do anything else, just box him." And McNabb had a look on his face that said, "Frightened are you?" and another look that was sizing up his man, and showed his brain ticking over and trying to read Johnny's moves. And then he plunged. He saw an opening, and he hit, and he came in with a flurry of punches, but they struck on gloves and steely forearms, and he felt a jab in his wind, and he smashed over a hard right, but Johnny wasn't there, and he knew he had missed badly, and he heard the raucous yells of admiration to tell him if he didn't know it. Johnny rode the punches. They curled around his neck as he came in and danced away again. He sidestepped and back moved, and he saw the puzzled annoyance on McNabb's face, and the cold light in his eyes that said, "Let me clout you once, and you won't be jitterbugging. One punch, that's all I need." And Johnny said with his chin, "There it is, then." But McNabb was wary. "There it is, then," Johnny's chin kept saying, and McNabb made a cautious jab at it to see if it was fooling. But it wasn't fooling. It was open and asking for it, and he shuffled into position, and he was ready to twist on his powerful legs and launch his weight behind that terrible punch. And he threw it cat-quick, but there was nothing to stop it, and his glove bored through air till the ropes cut against his body and prevented him from sprawling over the apron. And Johnny was behind him in light movement, hands up, waiting, smiling slightly, confidently, the thrill radiating from his face. He heard the low long gasp of the crowd like a sea rolling away, and now it came back in thunderous sound, and was dying when the bell rang and came up again louder. "You little corker," roared Peter Costello up against the corner. "He'll be needing a net and trident before he's finished." Johnny looked down at his flushed, beaming face and onwards to Francie, and he saw her hands clasped rigidly on her lap. But she smiled and made faces of delight and encouragement at him. "You're making him look silly," Sam Piercy whispered hoarsely, holding Johnny's trunks out from his belly. "Watch him this time, though, and don't take him cheap. He's no mug. Box him again." McNabb came out, slightly flat-footed. Johnny danced into him, fainting, double fainting rapidly, flicked to left, and danced away again. Nobody missed the look of puzzlement, exasperation, mild astonishment on McNabb's face. "What are you doing, Wally? Go on. Wally, you should be able to eat him. Cut on the slinging, Wally. More than 30 fights, Wally, and anyone would think you hadn't had one. Stop that ballet work of his, Wally. Who's the welter champ, Wally, you or me, grandmother?" cried Peter Costello through his cupped hands. McNabb brushed off a left, fending a right, came in with a burst of energy, jabbing, ripping in the infighting, and the crowd went wild and barracked for the scalp, for the blood, and Johnny's arms flashed like swords, and he was going away when the hook smashed on his jaw, and he fell to the canvas and shook his head, and he knew then how McNabb could hit. Go to a punch like that, and you'll be out. You got it going away, and it still threw a blanket over your brain. Listen to the hoarse and maddening cheering. Listen to them shrieking and screaming. For you, for McNabb, get up, 7, 8. He got up, and McNabb came in for the kill, and he threw a terrific left, but Johnny's right speared over it, a blur in its speed, a beautiful cross, and McNabb took it coming in, and his body jolted back on his heels, and he fell to his knees and groveled on the canvas, and rolled over and struggled feebly to get up. And the ref was counting, the crowd was yowling like animals, and the ref was counting, and the shrieks and whistles and yells drummed and thundered, and the ref was counting, and the bell clanged. The seconds rushed into the ring and helped McNabb to his corner. They worked hard on him. Johnny's chest was rising and falling gently. He was gulping in the air through his nostrils. Sam held his trunks out at the waist, and Johnny drank from the bottle, rinsed his gluey mouth, and spat. He looked at Francie, and behind the smile on her face there was a pain of anxiety. His father was tugging at his leg and asking how he felt, and he said he felt good. "This round," Sam Piercy said, "go in and get him, and watch that right of his in close. You're boxing the ears off him. You've given him a lesson. Now fight him. Get him this round." "I'll get him this round," Johnny repeated, nodding. Johnny went out, springy as bamboo. "He looks all right. He ought to be. He's fit to perfection, but he might be a little sick downstairs. He might be a little groggy right there in the core of his brain. Give him the left in the guts. Feint him into the left corner. Work him up to the left counter. And be ready with your head, well to the right with your head, and stepping in, and his punch shooting past and bringing his solar plexus hard on to your short, stiff driving left. And right here it comes, and a sharp burn of pain jarred up his arm. But in the twinkle of thought he lifted the left in an uppercut, and swung a right to McNabb's head, and McNabb went down and twisted off his back and on to all fours, and on to one knee, and got up at 9, and smothered and clenched, and Johnny fought him back. But McNabb's defense was desperate and brilliant in its desperateness, and Johnny could see McNabb was going to ride the rest of this one through. "Get him, Johnny," he heard Sam Piercy shouting. "Open him up." And Johnny used uppercuts right and left. Then suddenly he blundered into his man, and staggered back, and he heard the strange, concerted cry that took the vast crowd. He felt the dismay on his face, and he moaned, "God help me, Mary Blessed Mother, help me," and he fell back and threw his arms up in smothered defense and bent his body, but the blows were crashing against his head, and the smell of the sweating leather was stronger in his nostrils, and he thrust out a left lead, and his head shot back from a blow on the jaw, and he swung a wild right and smothered up again, "Jesus help me." And they were singing out, "Get him, Wally, he's all yours, you've got him, Wally." And he knew they thought he had been hit. They hadn't seen it, but they thought he had been hit. He tasted blood in his mouth, and he grabbed McNabb and put his head against his side and clutched and tried to tie up his arms. But McNabb fought like a hurricane, smelling victory. "And listen, Johnny, they're roaring out there, and there's a new note in the roar. You're slipping down, you're being beaten, and they want to see you beaten, down to your knees, bloody and unconscious on the floor. They're giving you away because they've identified themselves with you, and when you punch McNabb, that's them punching McNabb, and when you evade brilliantly, that's them evading. But they're giving you away now because they're letting themselves down by sticking with you. And it's in them already, the indifference that makes them talk later and say you were never any good. A flash in the pan, a mug, and they're passing you by, and you're forgotten. Mary Mother of God, help me." Clang! McNabb dashed back to his corner. Johnny groped and walked into a neutral corner, and Sam and Whitty grabbed him and sat him on the stool. And Sam Piercy said, "Johnny, what's up? What's the matter with you, son?" And Johnny said, "I'm all right." And he heard his father's voice and Francie's, and Sam Piercy say, "Can you go on?" And Johnny said, "Yes, I'll be right." He said anxiously, "Don't do anything, I'll be right." His nerves were taut, but relief seeped into them. He saw light through the grayish retiform blur, and the stippled shades became solid, and he blinked his eyes, and the bell went, and he came out. And the shouts and the yells started. "Finish him off, Wally." Johnny foxed a little, and he saw the gleam in McNabb's eyes. And McNabb swung a vicious right to the body and a left to the head, but they didn't land. And he fell back a little in surprise momentarily, and he tore in again, but Johnny's defense was impenetrable. He brought a shock punch under McNabb's heart and caught him with a left hook, and a glaze came into McNabb's eyes, and he tried to clinch, but Johnny drove stiff, short uppercuts, and the referee pulled them apart, and they were singing out for him now. "Get him, Johnny. He's all yours. You've got him, Johnny." And Johnny fainted and tore in attacking, and fainted again with lightning speed, and drove his left to McNabb's stomach, and the roar of the crowd was like the pound of blood in his ears, and he let go a left hook, and it seemed he had broken his hand. McNabb was lying there unmoving in that circle of pandemonium, and the referee didn't count. He patted Johnny Costello on the head, and the seconds were in the ring, and the ambulance man and Sam Piercy was helping Johnny back into his corner and praising him, and Johnny was smiling quietly. He was looking at Francie's thrilled face and his father's red and sweating, and they fuzzed and bleared, and there was only sound. His father was wringing his hand and crying and shouting, "The champ, the new champ, me boy, me own boy Johnny, you little beauty." And Sam Piercy was saying, "He had him beaten from the first bell. He's a bloody marvel. Made Wally look like a novice most of the time." And Whitty said, "He's a natural Sam." And Johnny said, "How's Wally? Is he all right?" "Yeah, he's okay, Sam said. Here he is now." And Wally McNabb grabbed Johnny's hand and said in his husky voice, "Go fight, Johnny. I didn't have a show." And Johnny put his hand over Wally McNabb's hand and shook it. Sam said, "Come on, Johnny." And Johnny stood up and pulled his dressing gown around him. And Sam said, "I'm dinkum thrilled, Johnny, and that's something coming from me." There was a slight catch in his voice. Mechanically, Johnny got down out of the ring, and Francie threw her arms around him and covered him with kisses, and he felt the pats on the back and heard the praise from those around. And Francie said, "I'll wait for you, darling," and he nodded, smiling, and said, "I won't be long. Wait with her, Dad." And Sam had an arm around Johnny's shoulder, and Johnny was able to go with Sam to the dressing room. He had his rub down, and Sam told him to take a shower, and Sam caught the aghast look on Johnny's face, and he said, "What's the matter, son? You should be jumping over the moon." And Johnny whispered, and the whisper built into a quiet, deadly loudness, and he said, "Sam, I can't see. I'm blind." Sam Piercy's mouth fell open, and he stood rigid, and then silently he waved his hands in front of Johnny's eyes, and he saw nothing but the unblinking stay in them. And Johnny said, as if to himself, "It usually passes, but it doesn't seem to be passing this time. It's getting darker. It was gray, and now it's black." A quiet had come in the room, and Whitty, Sam, and a few others stood silent as men around a cenotaph, looking at one another and staring at the sweep of alarm on Johnny Costello's face, the fright on his clean young face.